Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. Today, my guest is Julia Davis, who is a yoga teacher, an author, a podcast host, and her friend just released the book, Circle Holding, a practical guide to facilitating talking circles. And we talk about what a talking circle is. It's a place where people can come together to share their experience with clear intentions and guidelines. And so we really break down how to create a beautiful circle or how to enter a circle that's right for you. And you want to make sure that there's inclusivity, that everyone has a voice. We talk about how to deal with difficult personalities, if the group should be open or closed. And we really just break open this topic. And I think that circles are so important for being in community, for hearing perspectives that might be different than your own, for sharing your own perspective, and just for building intimacy. I know that in my own life, I have some sharing circles that I'm a part of, and they're really impactful and powerful. And some of my best friendships and relationships have evolved from being a part of the circle. So we talk about, if you want to be a part of a circle, how to find one that's right for you, and if not, how to create your own. I hope you'll have some beautiful takeaways from this podcast. I want to thank you so much for being here today. Please, if you would, take a moment to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe and help spread the word. And I hope you'll enjoy today's episode. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Hi, Julia. Welcome to the Connected Community Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes. So I am excited to be recording this with you. If the format looks a little bit different for people, it's because Riverside has been giving us a hell of a time this morning and we switched to Zoom. So I have nothing positive to say about Riverside at this moment. But thank you for recording this for me on Zoom today.
Oh, you're really welcome.
Yeah. All right. So you've been a yoga teacher. You've been teaching yoga for 15 years, yoga nidra, deep relaxation, and you just co-authored a book about circle holding. So what is circle holding for people that are unfamiliar with that term?
Okay, so I've been teaching for over 20 years. Can you believe that?
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Too.
It's a long time. So circle holding is, if you imagine a time where you've sat around in a circle and you've been able to see everybody who's in that space, and you've had the opportunity to speak without being interrupted, then the chances are that you've been held in circle, and that can happen intentionally and it can happen unintentionally, or you might have been part of a circle that someone spent hours or weeks organizing and you didn't even know what the magic was that was occurring. So you might have been on a retreat, and when you entered that retreat, you might have been greeted, you might have sat around in a circle with everyone, you might have introduced yourself, and it's likely that the person who was organizing that retreat really thought about, how will it be for the people coming into this space who maybe don't know each other or maybe traveled a long way. And I thought it would be really useful, rather than it being an unintentional thing, for people to actually be able to unpack what it takes to hold a space where people might feel that something really lovely has happened.
I think that's really important because I feel like sometimes when there's a circle, if the intention's not clear, then everything's muddy. If there's not a clear start and stop time, it's really muddy. I've been a part of lots of circles, and I'm holding a circle now at my home, and I learned some of these things the hard way. And so I think you're going to give us the tips and tricks so that we don't have to learn these things the hard way about what does make a circle successful.
Yeah, so one of the big questions that we're asked is, what if there are really big personalities in the circle? What if there's somebody who just takes over and you arrive and nobody really gets a chance to speak because this one person just keeps on speaking, and you can tell people are looking around the space, they don't know what to do. And that happens really because the person who's holding the space hasn't given that person an opportunity to be quiet and
Mm.
hasn't given other people an opportunity to speak up. And there are really simple tools that you can use to ensure that everyone does have their voice heard. And that's good for the person who is, I like the word loquacious, likes to talk a lot.
Mhm.
I'm a loquacious person. And
Mhm.
I love nothing better than being held in circle where I'm told, okay, welcome everybody. You've now got the opportunity to say where you've come from, what you do, and what brought you here. And maybe see if you can do that in one sentence.
Yeah.
And we use the word lean speech. So really think about what you want to say and whether you can say it in one sentence or if you can say it in two sentences. And even somebody who talks a lot, if they've been given one or two sentences, will notice in their head, oh, I've said 5 sentences. And then they'll stop at 5, where they
Yeah.
might have talked for 15 minutes if you just let them. Often, if you're having an open circle, you've invited people who are from the same demographic. So let's say they're parents with very small children, and they're coming together to talk about what it's like to, I don't know, feed them for the first time, whatever is going on.
Mhm.
You might open a circle by saying, so what's gone on for you for the last week? But if you say that and you give no time scale for that, and one person has had a hell of a week and she's not really spoken to anyone that week because
Yeah.
she's a parent with a new baby and that often can happen, they might take up all the time, and those other parents who also need to speak might not be able to. So give them a period of time to speak for.
Yeah. It does make me think though that I just went to a retreat in Mexico. It was a 9 days women's retreat, and we had a little bit too much downtime. But there was a lot of time, and there was only 5 of us in retreat with 2 facilitators, and I feel like they said to us, like, we had some really big experiences and we were there to have big experiences. And after those experiences, they said to us, tell us a sentence of how that was for you. And I felt we all needed way more space than a sentence for how big the experience was. And because we're paying a lot of money and we're in Mexico and there's unlimited time there. And so I think sometimes those parameters make sense and then sometimes they don't.
Totally. And so the bigger the thing, the more time you might want to create for it, and the more ways to share you might want to choose to have.
Mhm.
So, for example, I run a circle which is for movement professionals and yoga teachers. And in that circle, they're working out where they've been, where they want to go. And those are big things that you can't resolve in one or two sentences. So there's the opportunity to maybe meditate about that first. And then maybe from that meditation, go into journaling. And
Mhm.
then from that journaling, go into it twos and do what I call a listening partnership, which is talking without being interrupted. And then you come back to the group and you have a chance to share. And then you might journal one more time. And then you might start to think about maybe a next step that you might want to take. That doesn't take one sentence. That takes
Yeah.
a while. And so I need to make sure that the number of people that I've got in that group is the right number for them all to be able to have that experience. So in that particular circle, the maximum number of people in that circle is 8. Because if I have more than 8 people in that space, they haven't got the time to do the work that they want to do.
That makes sense. And I feel like everybody's been in a group at one point where there's been somebody that's monopolized and people are rolling their eyes and like they've just taken over. And so even I've noticed that that happens with parameters in place sometimes. And so as a facilitator, I feel like that's one of the trickiest things to navigate. And so what advice do you have for managing that when it does come up, when you have done everything right, you set the parameters, and there's still someone that's just tending to monopolize? And my guess is if they do that in the circle, they tend to do that outside of the circle as well.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why you might have somebody who is actually responsible for holding the space is because you've set guidelines at the beginning of your circle, and those guidelines are there to be adhered to. So it might feel intrusive to interrupt someone who isn't adhering to the guidelines, but you can do that. You can say, oh, we said 5 minutes. You've gone a little bit over 5 minutes. we're going to pause here for a moment and maybe give a few of the other people in the space the opportunity to reflect back on what you've talked about. So
Yeah.
whenever a guideline is breached, it's okay to talk about that. For example, a circle that I ran recently, somebody arrived late. It was the first time we'd had the circle. I had sent guidelines that were very clear about the start time and the end time. There was a very real reason. There was really bad traffic. Her meeting before had run over. There were all these reasons. And then when she heard the guidelines again, which she'd already received, she was like, oh. And then we had a little conversation about it afterwards. And so we have to have heart with that and give them space to adhere to the guidelines, or maybe to decide that it's not the space for them if they can't adhere to the guidelines. And that's okay too. So if she said, you know what, I'm always going to be 20, 25 minutes late, I might have said, well, let's see if we can find another space that you can come along to where the timing works better for you.
Yeah.
And we would have let go of that. Or she would have gone, okay, if I can't come if I'm 25 minutes late, how can I rearrange my life so that I can make it? Because that's actually more important than the other things that I have.
Yeah. Well, I think time is another issue. Starting and ending on time is really tricky. As a circle holder, and knowing that that happens in our circle too. There's always somebody running late. And it seems to be like a theme. And so I'm kind of curious how that conversation went with her. How did you address that?
So she actually addressed it first by going, oh, okay, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to commit to this. And
Hmm.
then we had a little conversation about it. And then I followed up with the email. And in the response to that email, she was like, that's great. Her mindset's changed now because
Right.
she really understands the importance. And also, we'll see how it goes. If she can come within the first few minutes, then that's fine. And also, something else that you can do with latecomers, if you've got time, if you've got a 1 hour circle, you can't, it's hard to do that. But if you've got more time than that, you can have a settling practice, like some kind of you've arrived
Hmm.
thing that happens. And then after the arrived thing that's happened, there might be a ritual where everybody has the opportunity to say their own name somehow. And then by the time you've done that, let's say you've got 12 people in your circle, that 12th person who's coming late, they might not have had the same opportunity to land.
Hmm.
That's kind of their choice, but they haven't prevented anyone else from landing. And also with some circles, there's going to be a lot more leeway. So if you've got something with new parents, or you've got something with
Yeah.
carers, or you've got people who've actually got
Hmm.
real responsibilities that are bigger than our circle, we just have to let go of that as facilitators and do everything we can to support the people who are doing everything they can to be somewhere that's really, really necessary for them.
Yeah.
And that might mean having a co-facilitator. That might mean having guidelines somewhere else so that they've, and maybe sending a message to them before, just reminding you of the guidelines. I know you might be late today, that sort of thing. And it's gauging that and how people are. I remember, this is actually in a yoga class, there
Hmm.
was somebody who was always considerably late, but I kind of knew they would be.
Hmm.
And we managed to work out the class so it didn't interrupt other people, and she managed it. And the amount of time that she came was really valuable. If it had impacted everybody else, if it
Yeah.
hadn't been okay for them, then sometimes you've just got to go with the majority. But if it doesn't, then you do your damnedest to make sure that the person who needs it can get there and can be looked
Yeah.
after.
And I guess it does depend on the circle. I used to teach a yoga class that had 40 people in it, and I started noticing that people would leave for Savasana, which is the most important pose, as we know. And there would be 6 to 8 people that would just get up and leave right before, and it would be this big disruption where everyone's laying down and they're quiet, and there's all this commotion and action happening. So I started saying in the beginning of class, if you need to leave at any point, please leave before Savasana, because I can't stop them from leaving, but I can at least stop them from being disruptive. Um, and there was this one guy that every single time I would make that announcement, And every single class he would leave during Savasana. And I just, there was this at the point where you can only pick and choose your battles. There's only so much that you can do. And so it was the decision to just kind of let that go. He was really committed. He came every single week. And so I think it does depend on the circle. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, definitely. As we get more experience, it's the same with being a yoga teacher. You start off and your lesson plan is like glued to your hand, and it's every little like minute of the class is assigned something.
Yeah.
And then like 20 years later, you've got like a couple of words, and then you change your idea, because it's raining that day, or because
Yeah.
everyone in the class looks depleted, and you're like, okay, I was going to do a really active. In fact, that's happened this week. But you can't do that with no experience. And that doesn't mean that I should never have started as a yoga teacher because I had no experience at the
Right.
beginning. But you do things differently, and maybe you take a lot more time, effort, and energy. I used to spend weeks on a lesson plan
Hmm.
20 odd years ago,
Yeah.
and now I don't. That it could, could be the same with holding circle. It is okay to spend a lot of time, effort, and energy on something that you care about.
Yeah. Well, so what are some of the other parameters to a successful group? So one of them was having clear intentions. Another one you mentioned was having a clear start and stop time. What are some of the other things to make it successful?
So one of the big things that people worry about is a theme.
Mm,
And you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. But the thing is that the people in the group could well dictate that theme. And if you're one of the people who are part of that group and there are things that matter to you, then they're likely to matter to the group. And you can use broad themes. And because of who you're with, those themes will be relevant. So if you're doing something, if you're starting a group for the first time, new beginnings can be a good one.
hmm.
If it's coming towards the end of the year, endings and looking back can be a theme.
Hmm.
If you're in tune with the seasons, you can choose any of those points. The summer point, the winter point, each of the equinoxes, those can be a theme. And also, if you're meeting weekly and the theme is dictated by the group and you've got a specialist skill set, so for example, grief circles can be a specialist skill set, there can be no theme because the theme is dictated by the name of the group.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what about open and closed circles? Because that's a big difference. Or if some of them are open and they meet every week or every month and people can come and go. And then there's some closed circles that might have an end date or an end time. What about those parameters?
I think it can be really liberating to
Hmm.
have a closed circle for a particular period of time. And that can really work very well when there's a teaching element to it. It's like there is learning that threads all the way through, and there's sharing that's thread all the way through.
Yeah.
So if you've got a couple of hours together, the first hour might be the teaching, and the second hour might be the sharing. Or you might have 10 minutes of sharing, then a 30-minute share, then a 15-minute share. And because you're building a community, you might find other ways to connect in between the time that you're together in circle.
Hmm.
There might be a WhatsApp group going that people are happy with because
Yeah.
they know that there's only X number of people in the group, and you've shared guidelines about what that group is for, and you can make sure that they're adhered to.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been a part of a couple of groups where they have a talking stick or some kind of object. And so when that person is sharing, that they hold that stick or that object. And then when they're done, they pass it to the next person. And I love that too, because it's different than a conversation where everybody's going back and forth and interacting. It's you have your moment to express yourself. You're a little bit more thoughtful about what you're expressing because you have the floor, and then you pass it on, and that is you're passing it on. It's that other person's time, and the intention is for your energy and effort to move to that person too.
Yeah, that's lovely that you say that with the energy and effort. I like another way as well. I really love it when you have the listening stick and you put it in the middle.
Mm.
And then when someone's moved to speak, they come and take it.
Oh yeah, that can work
Um,
too. Yeah.
yeah, and what I love about that is that it gives you that kind of sense of autonomy. You're making that choice to pick up that stick rather than having it passed to you and you might not be ready. And
Hmm.
also, sometimes people want to hang back and
Yep.
sometimes people want to step forward. And if you're the last of a group to speak
Yeah.
and your energy is kind of going this until you burst, you might actually get the opportunity to pick up the stick and go sixth rather than 12th. And if you're
Hmm.
petrified about going second, I would say the facilitator is a good person to go first because then
Yeah.
you're not making anybody else say anything. And that's another thing to say, that as facilitators, it
Yeah.
can be really helpful to start things off with something that is from yourself. And when you're modeling, you're also kind of setting the
Mhm.
tone for what that might look like as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the women's group that I have at my home, we call that popcorn style. So it's just whenever you're ready, you can just jump in. We don't have a stick, but it's almost as if there's a stick because everybody's really following the intention of this is who we're going to listen to now, and then when that turns over, we're going to move our intention and our energy to the other person. And you're right, yeah. So in some circles, it might be best to go around in a circle. Other times, it might be better to do that popcorn style.
Yeah, I use the word popcorn style as well. And I think the stick can be really helpful because I think it can depend on where you are in your facilitation journey,
Hmm.
how confident you feel. And it's like a prop. So
Yeah.
if you've got that prop there, it can really help you as a facilitator because you're not worrying about, oh, who's going to speak next. Like when you've
Yeah.
got a stick in the middle, or you've got something that someone picks up. Like if three people go to pick it up at the same time, two will sit back and then let one of them take it. And that takes the pressure off you as a facilitator to pick which of the three could speak, or
Yeah.
or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I find because we don't have the stick, there is this time sometimes where there's this awkward moment. And instead of jumping in as a facilitator, it's letting that silence and that awkwardness sit for a moment, and then somebody will come forward. They always do.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that is a test of it's like a test of nerve.
Hmm.
Silence is really powerful and useful. It can be really fantastic to go, okay, I can hear the pause. I'm desperate to fill it, but let's wait and
Hmm.
see. It's like like you say, if no one's said they're going to speak next, there's such a, oh, who would like to speak next? You feel like you'd like to say.
Yeah.
But if you don't, and have a little bit of space, maybe someone said something before that is profound or needs a bit of space. And actually, something that I interviewed someone from Gather the Women, which started in America.
Hmm.
And the woman that I spoke to, she's in the book as well. It was amazing because she was around in the 1980s and they went to the UN and had circles in the UN of women. It was like a time where, wonderful things were happening in the women's movement. And she said that they've got this little thing, it's called a love tuner, I think. And you blow, like when someone says something that like feels profound, they give that
Oh,
thing
yeah.
space. And it might not be profound, it just might be heartfelt, or it just might be something that needs a little bit of, oh, well, thank you. That was really
Yeah.
fantastic that you said that. But rather than saying, thank you, that was really fantastic that you said that, space is given to it.
Yeah. I've been in groups where people have done clicks with their hands. They'll
Yeah.
do their clicks. If something resonates, they'll click. So it's like showing support without being disruptive. And I've been online with online circles where we're all muted and somebody's sharing, and we'll do this thing where we raise our hands and like shimmy our hands, and that's like, yay, like we're so excited for you, or that's amazing. And it's a way to show support in those circles without taking away from that person's process.
Yeah, that's something that I came across first time when I was with Narrative 4. Narrative 4 is an organization that does storytelling. So people tell their stories and then they share each other's.
Mhm.
And they did the clicking thing. And I thought it was so American.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it was, so in the UK, some people are a bit more reserved. So that's quite demonstrative. And we find it harder to be demonstrative as Brits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of went with it, but I was like, okay, that is a really good thing. How can we translate that
For the
into a
Brits.
more reserved?
Do one click.
Exactly. I can imagine us like something that we might do, which is much quieter, is maybe place our hands on our hearts, which
Oh
would,
yeah.
that's like a little bit, okay, I can do that. Clicking, I don't know, that feels a bit jazzy.
Yeah, right? Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's some groups that would be totally appropriate and others that it would not work at all.
Yeah, yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's great, but it is something to notice culture-wise that culturally people have different choices that they might make. There's different ways of, different levels of vulnerability that they might feel
Hmm.
comfortable with. So it's something
Yeah.
to consider.
Well, and I guess in some groups too, there's also somebody sharing, and then it's just going to the next person to the share and the next person to share. And other times they're sharing and then the group is giving them feedback before it goes to the next person. Because one of the things we do in our group is say, when you're sharing, ask the group, are you wanting feedback? Are you wanting reflection? Are you wanting them to hold space? Are you wanting advice? And to ask the group for what they're needing. A lot of times people don't say that, but we're really careful about not giving advice. So we might just give our own reflection of something. And so I think that that's important too, is to know the structure of the group going into it, especially if it's an open group where people float in and out, understanding the expectations or outlining that so that somebody doesn't get embarrassed.
Yeah, I think that absolutely is useful to do. We also can't control people's sense of vulnerability. So
Hmm.
coming into circle is a vulnerable experience. And some people might be ready for that experience, and some people might not be ready for that experience. And you can hold it as well as you possibly want to hold it. And you can put all the precepts in place, everything in place, and someone can still have a great experience and then go, oh my goodness, I was vulnerable there. But that's okay, because sometimes you're not ready for that level of sharing. And you might be sad that that person isn't, but then they might find other ways to be in circles. I've been in circle and we've got lots of stories and lots of quotations from people who've talked about the magic of circle and how amazing it was for them. And that's certainly my experience. If it's not held beautifully or it's the wrong kind of circle for them, they might not feel like that. It can even be held beautifully. So Tanya Forgan is somebody who's been who's in the book,
Hmm.
and she was part of loads of women's circles and she loved them to an extent. And then she found that there was something missing for her, and she's a woman of dual heritage, and she created her own circles for women of dual heritage. She needed that space where she could drop in. You can be not well represented in a group
Hmm.
and feel that you need a group where you will be well represented. So there's a guy who I've spoken to, and he was part of a massive men's organization. And back when he joined the organization, he's a similar age to me, he's in his early 50s. He mooted that it would be great to have a gay circle. And where it was mooted, it was quashed. And it took 20 years
Wow.
before that circle emerged. And he's now massive in that area of the men's circles group. But you can
Yeah.
go, okay, there's only one of me here. I'd like there to be more of me here.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. 20 years. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And there's all these people that wanted to be a part of it too, probably, and they just didn't have a platform.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious about another tricky point for me as a facilitator is inclusiveness. So making sure that everyone has a voice and everyone feels included and part of the group. And there are personalities, if you're introvert or you're not used to expressing yourself or you're new to a circle, that would prevent you from just really openly sharing. And so as facilitators, what advice do you have for bringing voices to those that tend to fall in the background?
Okay, so that's two different things, because you said
Yes.
inclusivity
Yes.
and then you said lifting up quiet voices.
Yes.
So with inclusivity, actually, it's like inclusivity within what? Because exclusivity can
Hmm.
be really, really helpful for circle. So you can have a group which is specifically for menopausal women, or for women of
Yeah.
dual heritage, or for men, or for.
Hmm.
So being really boundaried about your exclusivity can
Hmm.
really be beneficial to your group,
Yeah.
especially if it's a vulnerable group, because that group wants to feel safe enough to be able to speak. And it's likely that there are opportunities where you don't feel safe enough to speak if you feel that you're going to be judged, or if you think or you've had an
Yeah.
experience of being judged or not heard in a way that you were expressing yourself. So you say one thing and the people who are listening hear something else,
Yeah.
because they're not from the same group as you.
Yes.
So that exclusivity does lift up the voice. So when you feel safer, it is likely that you might feel more comfortable to speak, because you're not censoring yourself. So I've been in groups where I've been the minority
Hmm.
and I've been really cautious about sharing. And then I've shared. And I've actually attended to groups to see what it would be like if I shared. And I was sharing in an absolutely appropriate way for the group, but I was sharing my lived experience.
Hmm.
And what I heard back was words that showed that I wasn't being heard and that I wasn't safe in that
Hmm.
space. And
Hmm.
so I retreated from that space
Yeah.
and I went into a space where I knew that I could voice those things. And so I went to a community where I could be heard and I did
Yeah.
feel safe, where there were more people who were like me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Everything. Yes. 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 Everything that you said. And then let me clarify when I mean inclusivity, I mean including everybody in the group so that they feel like they have a voice. So I'm thinking of the one introvert who's really quiet, who doesn't share. And when I'm thinking about inclusivity, I'm thinking about like, how do I enhance their experience, and make sure that they have a voice as well?
So one of the things that you can do is make space for that quieter voice to be listened to. So you might say at the beginning of circle, if you're really confident, you feel like you can easily speak, then maybe take this opportunity to practice your listening skills more.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a really delicious opportunity for you to hear what others have to say.
Yeah.
And if you're not used to having your voice heard, I'm hoping that we've created a space here that feels safe enough for you to voice
Yeah.
something. And then
Yeah.
there is that, when you open the circle,
Hmm.
everyone says their name. You might have the where did you come from today? Like a really easy question,
Yeah.
that can be really lovely, because if you're running a circle and people are really local, it's like, oh, I came from a street away. Oh, I came from a street away. Oh, I came from a street away.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, we've got a group of people that live walking distance from each other, and they've
Yeah.
said that. And then you don't always have to speak. You can journal. And also, the other thing that loosens tongues is activities. You might be somebody who's really good at arts and crafts. And I don't mean like you're a brilliant artist, but what
Right.
you feel comfortable getting people to make things like a
Right.
mandala or do some coloring or whatever it is. Like there are knitting circles where people literally they've got their
Yeah.
knitting needles, and there's
Yeah.
something about doing something with your hands that takes you away from the fact that you're using your voice.
Yeah. 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 I like that. And I mean, something I've said a ton on my podcast, and I say it every time in the women's group, is this is a place to practice being uncomfortable, because in the discomfort, there's a lot of growth. And so if you tend to not share your thoughts and feelings, if somebody triggers you, you never say anything, like here's a place to mess up, to make mistakes, and to explore the uncomfortableness. And it's a safe place to do that. So then it's easier to do it outside in the world. So if like a conversation could be uncomfortable, here's a safe place to practice it. Or I'll offer somebody to open up the group. And so if they've never shared a meditation, or they want to use their voice and sing something, or lead an opening om or something like that, this is an opportunity to step outside of the comfort zone, practice something that makes you a little uncomfortable, because there's so much growth in that. And then the same thing would be for that person, for those people that tend to not share and not speak. That would be a place to practice that uncomfortableness.
Yeah, and if you like that terminology, that the using the words uncomfortable, you're using those words with the people that you're inviting into the space. So they're only, they're coming along knowing that that's an intention that you've set actually for the circle
Yeah.
to be uncomfortable. And so they should be okay with being uncomfortable. If you haven't set that as an intention and then you're inviting people to be uncomfortable, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
I didn't come here to be uncomfortable. I came here to feel secure.
Yeah.
So that's why there's an explicit nature to circle that really makes a difference. And that's something that, so amazing circles can happen by accident. You can be sitting around a campfire and then it's dark, no one can see each other. These stories come out and it's amazing. If you're intentional about it, you can give people an opportunity to step out of their comfort zone, and they know they're doing it, which is kind of lovely, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. What advice do you have for people that want to open a circle, or they want to join a circle and they don't even know where to start? They want community. So there's two questions here. One is somebody looking for community and wanting to find a circle, but not knowing where to go for that. And another one would be, and I've done this before, I didn't have a circle, so I started one myself. And so how to do that, how to start a circle and create that community within their own network.
So it's much easier to find a circle and be part of a circle than it is to create one of your own. It's a really good idea to do the looking, do the searching for the circle. And it might be that you're literally Googling it. I'm somebody who's been through this experience. I want to find other people who have. AA circles, or they're for people who it's a life and death. So it's a
Yeah.
real lifeline. And it's really important with those circles that they're run by people who know what they're doing. You
100%.
might have a very specific need. And if you have a specific need, there are often charities or organizations that support that need. If you're part of a religious community as well, there's often spaces. So I think you're lucky if you have a higher power that you believe in, and they have a place where people go to pray to that higher power. There's an institution in place that is likely to be able to support you, and it often supports young people as well. And there'll be people who will be hopefully well paid, or at least paid something in order to support that. If there isn't, then you might be in a place where you're looking and it's not there, and you need to create it for yourself.
I mean, I love that, because you can think about the groups that are out there. It could be a caregiver support group. It could be a grief group. It could be somebody that's lost a child or a family member. There's so many different groups out there. But if you have something really specific that you're looking for and you can't find it, um, then somebody's able to start it. But then do you have advice about how to start it? What are the things that they need to have in place, set in stone, before they go out and seek people to join them?
They don't even need to have anything set in stone before they start talking to people about the idea. I mean, our book, Circle Holding, takes you from that spark of an idea to setting up your circle, the whole arc of the circle, to closing your circle, to the decision-making process around whether it's online, whether it's in person, how often you run it, whether it's a closed circle, open circle. There's little exercises all the way through the book that can take you through that. And there are stories as well. So it's not dry. It's not like just a how-to, because that would be really boring. But the first spark is to think, I'd like to do this. And what does that feel like in your mouth to talk about? Who can you mention it to? When you mention it to people, what reaction are you getting? I need to give space for anybody who might be interested in the circle to speak about what they're interested in.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, well, people are gonna have to get your book. It sounds like a good one. Um, and I feel like I could talk to you for a long, long, long time about this conversation, because I'm so passionate about this topic and I think it's so important and such a good one. How can people reach you and what are some of the things that you offer and your book and things like that?
So I've got a podcast which has got lots of. It's going to be you're going to be in it too, and that's Circle Holding Podcast. There are interviews with people, but also myself and my co-author Tessa have little sections where like big emotions and big feelings is one of them. Money is another one. So if you're like, oh, I just don't know about these things, then that's a way to learn in a really easy way. If there's somebody who does a commute every day and you just want to listen to something, then
Yeah.
that's the way to find us. The book is available at all good retailers, and if you put Circle Holding book in, it'll come up. And circleholding.org is where you'll find all the various ways that we run free events where you can find out a little bit more about circle holding, and you can actually do various training things, from coming along and doing a 3-hour fundamentals, which is a circle experience, which we unpack as each part happens,
Yeah.
to a 3-month training and that might be you if you're already running a circle, you've got loads of ideas of where it might go, you really want to invest to being with lots of other people who hold circle, and you can always contact me, info@circleholding.org. I love speaking to people, and we're all individuals and we're all going to have our own ways that we want to work, our own questions, our own nervousness. So I might be really nervous about one thing and someone's nervous about something completely different. And just having that encouragement would help you get over the line. But I don't think you need any special skills to start. But like you said, you're less likely to make the mistakes if you've got a guide.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you, Julia. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Oh, you're really welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nickyyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.